Hi everyone, I'm Anamitra from A4 Capital. Welcome to the Pre-Seed Show. Today I'm super excited to talk to Serena Ge. She's doing amazingly well. She started Datacurve here in San Francisco barely 6 months ago. And the reason this episode is a little bit different from all the others we've done is in the other companies that the founders that we've spoken to, those founders have already made it. And we wind the clock back to figure out what it was like when they first got started. But with Serena, she's in the thick of things. She started the company barely 6 months ago and is doing incredibly well. It's kind of under the radar here in San Francisco, but they're doing about several $100,000 of monthly revenue, which is quite incredible for a company that's this young. Of course, they're in the AI space. What's really incredible is that she's just 18, and her whole team are freshman dropouts from the University of Waterloo. How does she do it? How is the revenue getting so much? How's the company getting so much traction? What's the company about? And what's her journey? I see a lot of folks like her moving to San Francisco in the past year or so. So I was particularly curious about whether her experience can help a bunch of other folks. So let's dive in our conversation with Serena. Serena, let's dive straight in. You started a under-the-radar company here in San Francisco not too long ago, maybe 6 months, maybe a little bit more. You're already off to great traction. But what does Datacurve do? Maybe we can just start there. Like, how would you describe Datacurve to people you recruit or to customers?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Anamitra. I think how I would describe Datacurve is that, there are many pillars to training AI models, LLMs specifically, and one of the main ones that's currently a bottleneck is the data problem. What Datacurve essentially does is we provide a lot of training data for AI companies to push their models beyond coding bottlenecks to the next gen, to the next level. And the way we do that is through a gamified coding platform we built with for programmers to have fun and earn money in, and that's how we collect the data.
Yeah, so maybe what we can do is like explain a little bit more about labeling of data. Why labeling of data is interesting, why it's important, especially in the context of LLM. So as the way the LLMs are built, they require a lot of data to train themselves. And to train them, you need to label the data that they are being trained on. And this labeling, you can argue, has existed for some time now. There are lots of players in this space like Scale, etc. But Datacurve is not doing exactly that. It's doing something a little bit different, maybe a higher quality data. Can you touch upon that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. For like the LLM training process, there's the pre-training, which is when they scrape the whole internet and then do the pre-training model, which takes a lot of money and compute. And then there's post-training, which is what Scale AI and other players are focused on as well. Also, what we're focused on. The thing there is like instruction data and preference data. So specifically, the instruction data does not exist naturally. Like for example, ChatGPT answers to your instructions because it's trained on instruction data. Like, oh, write me a program or write me a repository that does X, Y, Z. It's from human data that providers have supplied to these modeling labs. And what Skill AI and other labs have done in the past with these data vendors is they hire a lot of contractors to like solve programming questions, and that's the data they feed back to their customers, the modeling labs. For us, we don't think that's going to be the way to achieve high quality data going forward, because the best programmers, they're like unhireable. They do things out of passion. They're not going to, unless you pay them a lot of money, they're not going to just like be a contractor data labeler. So we thought, dude, the best programmers are the most passionate ones. Let's create an experience for that demographic specifically, and then through like their interaction as a consumer of the platform, they produce this data, have fun, and make money. And we get the highest quality data without spending a ton of money. It's very effective. So that's the new approach that we're taking, which is a gamified data annotation approach compared to hiring contractors in the operations way that Scale does.
That's pretty cool. Now, you mentioned a few things that is maybe I'd love to learn a little bit more on. So the first thing is sort of the quality of data, and the second thing is data labeler. Now, is Datacurve focused on a specific type of data? And are you?
Yeah, we're doing.
Go ahead.
Sorry, we're doing coding only right now, and maybe adjacent fields like STEM and math right now, but with a sole focus on programming.
Got it. And that's fascinating because I think there are I believe Zuckerberg has been on record saying coding data itself is massively indicative of not just other coding type of tasks but non-coding tasks also. Why did you pick coding data specifically to start with?
Yeah, I think coding data is really interesting because if you think about anything an LLM can learn, coding is not just one domain of all skills in the world. It's like the building foundation of the world is engineering. So if an LLM is really good at coding, then essentially everyone has an autonomous AI suite. And that's so huge because anyone from any industry can now produce, they can create, they can build. So I think coding is not one domain, it's like the main value add of LLMs. And you can see that even right now, although we're not at the point where AI suites are here, we see that as like a very big value add to developers. You see like Codium, you see Cursor, you see all of these dev tools built on top of LLMs that are providing so much value. So we see coding as not just one pillar to get right, but the main pillar, the main use case LLMs need to get right.
Got it. And then what is it about the structure of code itself that is really interesting, that can really help inform other vast tasks or bodies of content that is text based?
I think the generalization about why models trained on code tend to reason better, shown in some recent papers, is probably, well, it's like speculative, but my opinion is probably because there's so much logic and reasoning going on when you're coding. Similar to how maybe you're doing high school and you're doing math. Your teacher's like, yo, you should try coding because there's many parallels between math, STEM, reasoning, and code. So perhaps that translates into general capabilities better.
Got it. Got it. And then you're also not just going after any old data labeler, but you're picking a specific set of profiles of people who are able to label data. Can you talk a little bit more about that cohort or that group of folks you're going after?
Yeah, especially as we're progressing to next gen LLMs, you really need high skilled labelers, or we call them contributors, users, coders, who are cracked. And these are not like hiring a lot of volume of people to like label images anymore. So the demographic that we target and the people who we find to perform well are really passionate developers who are skilled. Um, and yeah, we did a survey internally and found that 50% of our users do this as a part-time hobby. So that to them, money is not even the main motivator. So then, yeah, our people, the users tend to be super passionate programmers, contribute on a platform where they feel like their value is heard, and yeah, generally very high skilled.
Got it. And this is not available anywhere else. This pool of data labelers is not available anywhere else except on Datacurve. And also the focus that you have on coding data specifically is not available anywhere else. Is that generally right?
And we specifically focus on high quality coding data, yes. I presume that other labeling companies might also have tried to hire really good people, maybe as contractors, but the model is different and we are way more niched and focused on quality coding
Right.
data.
Right, right. So all of this is great, but like, so what? And the so what is the early traction you've had from really high quality companies, customers, of course, but also in revenue. There's a lot of pull, the market pull that you're feeling. Can you talk about why you're beginning to sense that?
Yeah, I think it's really crazy because when we first launched on YC, we never did any sales. Like all of our current customers and I presume future customers came from inbounds. Like I have no sales motion going on right now, which I will change later, but like this is a early sales process. So from just inbounds, we've reached seven figures in annual recurring revenue. I think the market pull, the pull situation is really interesting because like I wouldn't have started this company if I didn't think it was a problem while I was at Cohere. All the labs are always looking for more and more data, right? So, and also enterprises. Everyone's thinking about how to leverage the coding abilities in LLM, how to improve it, how to tailor it to their own product if they're not even a lab. So we tend to get a lot of interest from enterprises too. Yeah, the space is just really interesting, a lot of demand.
Yeah, it seems like it's heating up, right? It's and there are many AI companies, but you've got into about seven figures, you said, in annualized revenue in under 6 months or so. Something significant must be happening with big contract sizes, right? So why do these companies care so much about the coding data? Is it because they want to see productivity in their own staff, or is it that the foundational models that they're building is they're seeing benefits of utilizing this label data that's coming from Datacurve?
Yeah, I think our data, if our data didn't improve their model capabilities, they wouldn't continue to buy it, right? So it's a constant climb in whatever benchmarks they care about. For foundation model labs, they're always looking to improve their models, so they continue to seek out more data. Like the thing here is that like what actually improves model, right? Data is one big part. Algorithm might be one big part that people overemphasize, and data is one that people underemphasize. But like how much data matters, your model's learning what you're feeding it. So like you obviously have to give a good material to learn. So that's why foundation model labs come to us for data. And for enterprises, they don't want to like depend off of, let's say, ChatGPT or existing models. Like especially if you're a public company or a big company, you want to have your own IP. So they are thinking about how can we leverage LLMs in our existing products to improve the experience for our current users, and they might need data to train internal models, and then they come to us for that as well.
Right. And so I'm guessing you walk into many of these meetings. They're much more senior folks. That they're working in prominent companies, some of them public, lots and lots of experience, and your team is very smart. But this is probably the first time you're doing this. So what does it feel like to be in these rooms, or to be in these Zoom calls and getting all of these questions? It's clearly working. How do you feel when those things happen?
Yeah, I thought it would be like hard to sell to these large companies, but it actually turns out to be more trivial than I thought. Like I answer their questions, we're talking about the same things, we're thinking about the same problem, right? And we're building the solution for their problem. So I think they're asking great questions that we can solve. I go into these meetings are like, oh, these are just people, they work at X company, but they're just normal people. They seem pretty chill. And then we have a good chat, and then we proceed to the next step after the next step, and it seems to just go well. So I guess I just never had to overthink it in the first place.
Right. And I'm guessing you're working 24/7. You're working all the time to support these folks with a very small team. How do you manage? How do you prioritize? How do you manage your time?
Yeah, there's always like 20 or 30 things going on at the same time. Fortunately, you just have to do the ones that matter of to move the needle. So I think I have an ongoing list of things that come up, and if I didn't have this, I'd be going crazy because at one point I just like kept it all in my brain, and my brain would explode because there's too many concurrent things going on. So I just like write it on a list and see, yo, does this one matter right now? On If not, I move it to the bottom. And then at some point you just have to go one by one down the list, and then hope you get through a lot of it. So you just gotta put in the time. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, and a team is small, right? Just a handful of folks right now.
Yeah, so when we reached the seven figures ARR, we had three people, and then now we have four and a half. The half is not because he's bad, no, he's like remote and part-time. So
Right.
4.5, and we're hiring more eng.
So you achieved seven-figure ARR with just three people. Now you're four and a half. What's the situation like? What's the office scene like? Do you live and work in the same place? Is everyone staying together? You sharing a house, and there's one remote? Sounds like.
Yeah, yeah. So when we first got into YC, we got a apartment in Dogpatch, two bedrooms, two bathrooms, two bedrooms, and it was me and my co-founder. And then our first eng came, and then we had to like squeeze in. So the situations we have is just like a bunch of Japanese futons on the ground, and then now we have four people in person. So like he had to get his own place. But yeah, we're moving into an office in the coming days, so we don't
All right.
have to be in this situation anymore.
So the fourth guy got kicked out. Three of you are all good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So what do you do? Do you get a bigger house, or do you get an office and people just? It's like, because this still feels like a little bit like a college dorm, right? Is that something that you wanted, the experience that you wanted folks to have?
I think so. I think we want to keep a vibe of like a long-term hackathon because we feel like the main advantage we have is not any industry experiences. It's just that we have something to prove and we are very ambitious. Like we just don't give a fuck. So that's the vibe and the culture we intend to keep. We tend to have very young folks be around. So yeah, like our new office is like a cabin vibes, and our founding engineer tends to hang out in there very like 24/7 basically, and same for me and my co-founder. So it'll be the same vibe, just in a bigger space.
Right, the ambitious vibe comes through. What do you look for in folks when you hire them? They're probably your peers, and there's a commonality, right? Many of you are, or all of you are from the University of Waterloo, right?
Yeah, except for one guy, but most of us, yes. So I
All right.
think what we look for is we think about like why why we think it's going well for us. And the reason I think is because we're grinders. We don't think there's a limit to how far we can go. Like we just never understood any limit for ourselves. We never set any limits. And we've always been tryhards throughout the past years that we've been alive. So we actually want to hire more like young people, like new grads even, just to see their track record. Like for the past, let's say like 18, 19, 20 years you've been alive, what have you been up to, bro? Like what do you do? If the track record is impressive and they seem like just exceptional, either technically or they have great ambitions, then it's interesting to us, and we would like to possibly hire them.
Right, right. And what do you look for? Do you look for, I'm guessing, a lot of technical depth too? Like, how do you answer the question of what they've been up to in the 19, 18 years they've been on Earth?
Yeah, like we tend to just look at the projects and then be like, what are you thinking about? So we have a technical chat, be like, yo, what do you tell us about your projects? And then you tend to find that people who work on projects, first of all, they're self-driven because no one's asking you to work on projects.
Hmm.
And people who work on projects are super passionate, and the depth of their projects is like unlimited. Um, so like no one tells them this is the extent you can go. Like you can do whatever you want. Basically, it's a playground. You can like free form it. So the people we're talking to and the people we've hired, I've met them at hackathons or through projects. So that's like the pipeline.
And when you talk to other founders, now that you're in San Francisco, what sense do you get about how they operate versus how you operate? Is it kind of the similar? Is it kind of similar vibe you get across the board, or is it really personality driven? Personality driven.
Oh, well, one thing I was surprised by because my like notion of Silicon Valley is like from watching Silicon Valley HBO. So I thought everyone was like living in the same place in a hacker house and probably in a very smelly house and grinding 24/7. So I thought that was like how all the startups here worked. But people have more formal setups. Sometimes they have work hours. So I feel like I relate more to people who are on the same frequency as like, oh, it's like a hackathon, just grind. We have a few folks like that in my batch who I'm really close friends with, but people tend to operate their companies in different setups. So I think, yeah, mine is more scrappy.
Right. So was the Silicon Valley the show the reason you came to Silicon Valley, or some other reason? Nah. I'm
I mean,
half
I
half
always thought
kidding.
I wanted to be like, it actually is true. Like that show, I think I watched it multiple times. It's just like it's just so cool that you're building something you care so much about with the most awesome people, and I think that was really attractive. And also how there's always a lot of surprises and adventure. It seems like their life is crazy. Yeah, that was a big like pull factor. I thought it was like a cool life, the kind of life I wanted to live. Otherwise, I always knew that like SF is where things get creative, things are born, and the best people gathered. So I've always wanted to come to SF since like 15, 16.
Wow, wow. That's actually true. Do you have any? So it's borne out to be true. What you thought it would be is that what it actually is? San Francisco and and the engineering culture and AI specifically.
Yeah, I guess so, but I guess it's less crazy. Not every day is an episode in Silicon Valley. Like, not every day you pivot, you know? So sometimes you just do the work heads down, and that's the difference, but otherwise it feels as crazy as the show.
That's right. Well, talking about pivots, you worked on Uncle GPT before Datacurve. That was a really cool project, by the way. That's how we originally met, I think. What? Tell
Yeah.
folks what Uncle GPT was.
Okay, yeah, I think Uncle GPT is a really troll name, and it actually followed us until pretty recently. Like, we had to go into a legal conversation with the Fang, telling them to correct our name from Datacurve to Uncle GPT, and they were like, what is going on?" So it was kind of funny, but troll. Yeah, me and Charlie were in first year university when AutoGPT came out. At the time, everyone was fascinated by like autonomous agents, and it was very experimental at the time. And AutoGPT, like, it. was a good promise, but actually like never lived up to its promise. So me and Charlie were like, yo, what is missing in AutoGPT that's making it not reaching its potential? It's the ability to execute. Why don't we fix that? So we built a web agent that would recursively carry out tasks like on your laptop, on device. And that was basically the premise of UncleGPT. Give it a big task, it will decompose that task into many subtasks in the right order, and then carry out those tasks by navigating your laptop, your device. It was very experimental, and we pivoted away from it because, I think general agents are cool experiments, but it's hard to see like this specifically being a way to automate like specific use cases in businesses. Basically, it's hard to commercialize. That's what we found, so we pivoted away from that.
Got it, got it. And then this was just like you were at Cohere. You were working at Cohere too. Was this like after Cohere or before Cohere?
It was like during and before Cohere. Like before Cohere, I was doing my first internship at a bank, and Charlie was at Google, and it was really boring. Like we didn't like our jobs because it was very corporate and no one cares. We
Right.
didn't care. It just felt like you felt small and invisible because like even if you didn't work your job, someone else would do it the same way you would carry it out. And even if you didn't work your job, like it literally doesn't matter. So it felt like very unfulfilled, but we were just interested in building. So we built during our first internships, and we did it a little bit during Cohere because Cohere is like you do way more than you would at a corporate setting. So it was like pre-Cohere and during Cohere that we built this.
Got it. And then what was the pivoting process like? Sounds like, because there was no commercial signal for Uncle GPT and general lack of willingness to pay, maybe you pivoted into Datacurve. Was it an obvious next thing you wanted to do, or did that idea come about as a result of what you learned with Uncle GPT?
Oh, well, we pivoted multiple times actually. So as soon as we started Y Combinator, the Winter 24 batch, I remember the first office hour, I walked into Gary's room, and then we showed him what we pivoted Uncle GPT into a PM tool, like an AI-driven PM tool. And he looked at it and he was like, "Guys, I think you should get out of this space." Like, FYI, it was really bad. It was like it was not adding any value. It was not a complete tool. I just didn't know what we were gonna turn Uncle GPT into. We always thought like, oh, we have Uncle GPT. We cannot discard it. We should like pivot it into something adjacent. Um, so that did not work. We didn't want to build an AI tool either because we didn't care about PM. We also weren't PMs. After that, Gary suggested that we do backlog grooming, which is also PM adjacent. And we realized after like 2 weeks that we hated that space. I was like crying every other day because I'm like, guys, I didn't drop out to do a backlog groom. It's not happening. Um, we just knew we wanted to pivot like in the early YC batch, but we didn't know what we wanted to pivot to until a conversation with our neighbor Sweep AI, who's building like Sweet agents, and he was talking about how like code editing was a problem that they faced, and we decided to like train a model for them because we were in like discovery phases. At that point, we touched upon fine tuning, like maybe we can make a fine tuning tool, or maybe we can make a data tool because we also provided data. So we were touching upon like a broad spectrum of things, and we eventually narrowed down to a code data from that experience.
Got it. Now, fast forwarding to where you are today, where do you think Datacurve is going? Where do you think the big opportunity is here for you?
I think the future that I really look forward to is basically a future where everyone has a CTO just with them. Because you see, like me and another friend at OpenAI were having a discussion on what do you think is the bottleneck to faster and more innovations? Is it ideation or is it implementation? And then we came to agreement that it's definitely implementation because you might ideate for like 10 minutes and then implementation is going to take months, it's going to take days. That's where the quote, ideas are cheap came from, right? But you see, like, implementation is a bottleneck for anyone who is not a software engineer, and that is really bad. Like, imagine if my friend who is a med student could just like carry out her research and make the products her research pointed her into without needing to like spend 2 or 3 years learning to code. That would be huge. So we want to enable like very strong coding agents for strong coding models at a foundation model level. And we know that one of the biggest problems there, one of the biggest bottlenecks is the data problem. So we want to empower that future where everyone can have access to like a digital CTO.
Right. So this sounds like this is the first step. You're fixing something at the infrastructure, the quality, the data quality level that empowers, that enables better code, and then eventually that should lead to everyone not learning to code or needing to code, but they get high quality output. Um, but what does that? But there seems to be a gap between what you're doing now and the end vision, the personal CTO. How do you bridge that? How do you bridge that gap?
Yeah, like for example, right now you might think, oh, what about like small snippets SFT data? How does that lead eventually to like personalized CTO? So we're actually doing a lot of exploratory work and like repository-wide software engineering data, agentic tool use software engineering data, and those data could be used to train more autonomous systems that do coding beyond just snippets, do coding that is at the level that you envision Devon to be, or something like that. So we're moving towards harder and harder, more and more complex data formats to empower um, this kind of use case.
Right. So let's imagine if the future where someone has this personal CTO. Like, what could they do with it? What could they do then that they can't do now? What could be a really cool example?
Yeah, yeah, that's they can do anything. Like the reason why I was fascinated by CS, like the reason why I even got into why I decided to major in CS in the first place is because in high school I was an avid climber. I wanted to like compete. I wanted to boulder. And the issue there is that I like literally sucked ass. Um, literally getting like second last place in competitions.
What?
So
I
I went to a coach.
I can't imagine you getting
Yeah.
second last at anything.
No, that's so funny. No, I just liked it, but like sucked at it. So I went to a coach. I was like, yo, bro, like help, please give me a personalized training plan so I can progress. And then it costs a lot of money. I'm like, yo, I cannot afford that. Like $5,000. That's
Hmm.
more than like I have. That's like more than my life savings. So that's when I decided to like dig into a lot of climbing research and see how do coaches even create personalized training plans in the first place? Maybe I can automate that for myself and for other climbers who don't have that much money to spend. And to accomplish that, like to make a personalized climbing app, I had to. That's like my intros to computer science and software engineering. I did some iOS development there, UI UX design, and basically the motions of building. I went through that. It was long. I think that app took months to a year to build. And it's because I was not a software engineer at the time. It was because I didn't have the means to produce. And if everyone had a CTO, like you and I, like everyone around us is a software engineer, but that's not true for the rest of the world. Like anyone in medicine, in law, in any area, they cannot just create
Right.
software that scales to millions of people. They don't have that skill. So now imagine you can just tell them the requirements of your app that you want and iterate like in natural language until you like just get that app out like in front of your face. Maybe
Right.
within a day, maybe within 2 days, but definitely not months or years. Like that will speed up so much creation in the world in all domains.
That's right. That's right. It's sort of like everyone has great ideas, but they can't really implement them because they don't have the technical skills. So they need, or there are a lot of intermediaries that they need before they can get it done, and they move on to the next idea. So it never gets built. But if they had the superpower, then the things that they are thinking about can be manifested much faster, and they can iterate, improve.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
gets
yeah,
better. Other people can use it too. Um, that's
yeah.
terrific. Is that what your mom thought you'd be when you would grow up?
Oh man. Well, I grew up in China, and my parents thought like I always told them, hey, eventually I want to start my own business, and then they were like, they kind of laughed it off because I guess like tech startups isn't really the norm, in the culture that they were raised in, so they never like knew about this possibility. That's why they were dismissive. And then they would be like, oh, I just want you to be like happy. There were three things. They want me to be happy, they want me to be fulfilled and healthy. So those are the three things that they wanted. I think that's still the three principles they want me to fulfill just in life. But they're pretty flexible parents. Like they never try to force me into any career. But they would be like here and there. Whoa, what if you're a dentist? Then you can fix our teeth too. Or what if you're a doctor? Then you can like help us too. So it was never a viable option um, until like we moved to North America and then realized that the startup scene's very different.
That's right. Where did this ambitious bug come from? Where did you get this drive to and the desire and the drive to succeed and to do well?
Mm, I've always been a very introspective person, and I didn't know what I was gonna do with that, but I thought a lot. growing up, I had a lot of journals. I ran out of maybe 3 or 4 fake journals growing up. So I always thought about like who I am and what I wanted to do, what I wanted to be. And I knew for a fact that I wanted to live. I really felt that when I was doing my climbing app because there were users like emailing me about like, oh shit, this is so awesome. I really felt big in the world. Like you can
Mm,
sense your existence when you're building for other people. You can sense that you exist and that your existence is much more than just your own experience.
right.
It's a broader experience if you're creating for others. So I felt like that first spark when I was building my climbing app, literally in high school in my mom's basement. And that's a very addicting feeling. So I think I always just chase like self-fulfillment about like what can I do that will make me feel good. What am I gonna do in this world, right? I want to do something. So that's always been the thesis of like why I want to do more than just I don't want to just have a stable job. I don't want a family. I don't want to have like I don't want that thing because it doesn't feel like it's gonna be fulfilling for me.
Yeah, yeah, that's important because that's one of the three things that your parents want: fulfillment. Your fulfillment sounds like comes from not just working, but doing something that has an impact, and that impact impacts other people's lives or whatever they want to do, and that sort of circles back to you, and you feel a sense of fulfillment going through that sort of intrinsic motivation to do well, to create. What um, you also traveled, right? Like before you joined Waterloo, you were in Europe traveling. Tell me a little bit about how you learned, what you learned about yourself from that process.
Yeah, that experience was so special. And I wish it was like more extensive. I wish I took a gap year actually. That's one of my biggest regrets that I didn't take a gap year to explore. But the why I decided to do that is because I felt like the inability to move about on my own was seriously limiting my potential. Like FYI, I got into youth my headphones might die soon, but I got into youth nationals for the first time after like training with the app that I built. So I was like, oh shit, let's go. This is gonna be really cool. I'm gonna go to youth nationals. Not gonna win anything, but it'll be a great experience. The issue is that it's like in another province. It's like in Montreal. Like thinking back, it's not even that far. But I was in grade 11 or 12, I forgot. My mom's like, yo, you cannot travel by yourself because it's like unsafe, blah blah blah. So I couldn't go. I was like, what the fuck? I cannot go physically to like achieve my dreams because oh it was unsafe, I didn't have that skill or whatever. I understand where she's coming from though. Yeah, like I understand. Another time is like my friend Sijal Wen. I think some young folks like myself might know him because he was like an inspiration for like a lot of young builders. But essentially, Sijal Wen went to raise money in SF for his startup in high school, and I was like, yo, I want to do that. I want to go to SF. That's so cool. Like, let me do that. And my parents like, yo, what? No way. You cannot. Like, you literally cannot. You're like 16. Why are you going to SF by yourself? Like, that doesn't make any sense. You cannot do that. It's unsafe. Do not do that. So, like, some of these experiences were really devastating to me because it just felt like missed opportunities. It felt
Mm,
like I didn't have freedom. And I wanted to show my parents and like gain trust in them that yo, I can go places, I can achieve this freedom, and I wanted to, yeah, attain this freedom. So what I did was I was like, let's start close, mom. I'm gonna go to downtown Toronto, bro. I live in the GTA. It's like literally an hour away. She's like, cool. You can live at U of T. I'm like, cool. So I go to U of T for 2 weeks. And actually, Toronto, looking back, is like one of the more sus cities I've been to
mm,
because like there's more homelessness and somewhat more aggressive than like Montreal or
mm.
Paris. Um, I went there, and then my mom thought that was fine because it was close. So I learned some skills such as like living. uh,
By
it
yourself,
went well. Yeah, by myself.
and you
It
survived the
was good.
night. You survived the night
I
and the
survived.
day.
Yeah, yeah, in the day. For like a little bit of time, I went back to my house, and then I'm like, "Hey, mom, look, Toronto downtown is not so bad. Let's try Montreal." Montreal, and I specifically chose that because it's like the missed opportunity of going to youth nationals. So I wanted to like amend that regret. And then Montreal is like an hour flight away, 5 hours by train. So my mom's like, "Yo, Canada, it's chill. Like you can go." Especially after Toronto worked out. So I went to Montreal, and then it was great. Like um, that worked during these solo travels, I was really interested in lying to people actually, because like I realized for the first time no one knew about me and they will not know about me for their life. So I can just like make up whatever the fuck I want to say about myself. I can tell them I'm an art student. I can tell them I'm an incoming investment banker. So some things I did was like I went to like the JP Morgan office telling them I'm an incoming investment banker just to see what that life would have been like if I was. So then their security guard actually let me in. So I like just like toured around and thought, huh, this would be cool. I also pretended that I was an incoming art student at um like a makeup artist school. So I just went there and be like, yo, I'm like transitioning careers. So that's why I'm at the open house. And for like a day or so, you really immerse yourself into a completely parallel universe where you are that character you're pretending to be. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a really cool chance to explore your possibilities. Yeah, anyways, went to Montreal, lied to a bunch of people, like experienced a lot of different lives. And then I went back home. I was like, yo, mom, I'm going to Europe. She's like, yo, what the fuck? That's like very far. Like, how can you just jump from Montreal to Europe? And I told her that I would regret it if I didn't, because Waterloo did not have breaks. Like, you just work, you just study, work for 5 years. There's usually not any breaks.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, no. But I'm like, look, I have a ticket and I also got my own visa. It's approved. And then she's
Oh.
like, oh, damn, it's non-refundable. And then she had to let me go. So I just like, European countries are small. You just like take a Ryanair for
Mm-hmm.
99 euros around some countries. And I thought like that was a really cool chance to um, just explore how other people are living. The Munich had a very chill vibe. It seemed like they're just not stressed, and that like career is always second, or just families first, chill, like mental health is first. That's the vibe I got. The way different people live, I just talk to random people, and then sometimes I sat on a train with randos for like 4 or 5 hour chats,
Mm-hmm.
and it just like broadened my perspective on what's possible. So I thought if I chose a path for myself after exploring, it would be more responsible because I already knew what are the options out there.
Right. So this living in Montreal, traveling to Europe, was all the process of self discovery, trying
Yeah.
to role play different professions or aspirations for different, allow you to live that day, live in that profession for that day, surround yourself, and then you kind of came back to sounds like tech. That's the spot
Yeah.
where you felt you would have the most impact, right? And you did this sort of discovery
Yeah.
on your own. And then you went to Waterloo, but then you didn't stay. You left. Why did you drop out? That's not just if I pretend to be your mom for a second, I would think that your mom would, in keeping with sequence, she would probably say not a good idea.
Yeah, she said that. She said this is not a great idea. She was very against that. Like, so I went to Waterloo thinking, like, they advertise themselves as the number one, like, startup hub in Canada, or like the number one entrepreneurship hub in Canada. So I was very excited. I thought it was like the Stanford of Canada. And then I went, I'm like, wait, I guess it can be like the number one entrepreneurship hub of Canada, but that actually doesn't mean much because there's not much going on in Canada anyways. It was so disappointing. It was like for the most part, most people, not that they're wrong, like this is just a good path, I guess, for them, not for me. Most people is interested in getting a stable career at a FANG company or at like a large company. That's how like prestige and success is defined at Waterloo, generally speaking. And I really didn't vibe with that because I thought about it like if I stick through with the 5 years, and even if I excel in these 5 years, what is the best outcome of that 5 years? Is that I get like a good job, I get a good software engineering job. Is that what I want? No. Their success case is my failure case. So I knew that that wasn't a path for me. And so from the beginning, since understanding like what is Waterloo, what is the purpose of Waterloo, right? Just like feeding cracked engineers into FANG jobs or stable, high-paying jobs. Like since realizing that's not what I want, and Waterloo is not a pipeline I want to be in, I was just like, oh, well, I always wanted to build, so at one point I know I'm gonna drop out and I'm gonna do YC. At one point I'm going to be out. Like I'm just going to get more experiences and get more and more cracked until I can make it to YC and do my own thing. So that's like actually the plan all this time, and I guess it worked out.
Right. So if you achieve so much so early, from Montreal, Toronto, Europe, Waterloo, San Francisco, tech company, customers, oversubscribed funding round. What's next? What's the next big goal?
Yeah, the next goal is not anything new, but it's just scaling Datacurve. I think we really want to make the future happen where Everyone has a CTO. Everyone there exists competent autonomous suites, and I think we need to make that happen. So scaling in terms of revenue might look like more than 10 or 20 mil ARR in the next 6 months to maybe 10 months. That's the current goal. And then more than that is just like, can we actually push models to that level with our data? So that's the overarching goal, yeah.
Got it. Got it. Since we talked about funding a little bit, what was it like to raise money in the in a very successful round that you did raise? What was that? What was that like?
Yeah, our round was really interesting because we were at a point where we were kind of pivoting data curve. And we might be 2 weeks into the pivot when we raised our seed round after YC. And the situation was strange because um, like 2 weeks before starting to raise, well, we had to raise because if we didn't, we might get deported because we don't have an O1 visa. So we had to raise, but we were like, how, guys? We first need a product. We also need a customer. We also need users. We didn't have any of those three things 2 weeks leading up to the raise. So we just went all scrappy and got them all out. For the customer front, we got a 20K LOI, 20K MR LOI from Cohere at that time. For our initial product, we just like hacked it out over a few days. And for our initial user base, I just like went ham on social media and got a few hundred like FANG level engineers to sign up. And that literally was all the traction we had to raise our seed round, which was we raised 2.2, we got 3.5 in offers. So it was really interesting. Like we just had to tell investors about like we're gonna build this. We already have 500K from YC. Like we're already doing well. Like I'm not sure if you're gonna be the right partner, but like if you're also excited, you can join. So it was a lot of just calls after call. Um, but yeah, I think it worked out. So after like 10 days, I think we had our round put together.
That's sweet. 10 days, run done. What a lot of folks may want to follow in your footsteps, especially folks who are thinking about startups, are already passionate about startups, have their own projects. They're in school, but it feels like they could just get started now. What advice would you give them? Would you what advice do you give folks now who are in school who are considering whether they should stay or they should just drop out and start? How do you advise them?
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I have some friends who are like not enjoying school because it's impractical, is what they think, a waste of their time. It's just that like people think school's a default, but you're actually actively choosing to put 4 or 5 years of your time into this track, and maybe that's something people should like reflect about. Like, is that something you actually want to do? Um, I think working at a startup, a fast-growing one, might be really cool because you learn so much about what it's like being in this, operating this kind of space. Like I learned so much at Cohere. I have a friend who's interested in dropping out who might come intern here if there's no visa issues. So I think before like just taking the leap, maybe you can go intern at a startup, work at a startup for a bit, see if that's something you like, learn a shit ton, and then maybe start your own after. So just you also don't need to overthink it because if you're thinking of dropping out, you're one of the few people who are not content with school. So maybe there's something special going on with what you want that's different from the system. So yeah, I think it's like very valid.
Right, right. One thing we didn't talk too much about is your co-founder, Charlie. How did you all meet, and how did you decide that you wanted to sort of join forces?
Yeah, I met Charlie at school is a simple answer, but more nuanced is that I kept on seeing this guy everywhere, and he seemed like a little bit special because he's always coding, even in social situations. Like he's probably autistic, but like in a good way. But this guy always seems like he's super interested in the technical stuff. And then when I got to know him, it turns out he's one of the smartest people I've ever seen, just like to this day. The thing about Charlie is that we first started in the same class, like studying together, and I just thought, yo, this guy's so smart. How is it that every time he sees something he doesn't know, he just completely generalizes and figures out the thing at hand within like very quickly, very quickly. Something that like still makes me feel incompetent is just being next to Charlie because he's so smart. So I always thought this is like one of the smartest people I met, and we were at the same club and we were working on like we were at AI Safety Club together, so we were working on some products together. We hosted some workshops, and it just happens that we started Uncle GPT together too. It was not intended to be a startup. We just worked on projects, and slowly it turned out that we became like I just realized we were co-founders. So it's like not very intentional. It just happened.
Got it. Very natural and very authentic. Final question. Question on AI. Any forecasts, any predictions, anything people believe in AI today that you don't believe, or you think something else will happen?
Mm, AI predictions. Um, I don't really think that I agree with most people that this is something that can be very impactful um, once it's like fully deployed. One thing that I'm not too sure is like how exactly we're going to deploy it. So I think people should work on policy work a bit more. Like for example, all these researchers, they're working towards AGI, they're all working towards like AI suite agents. But if that's actually achieved, which is entirely possible because you get the smartest people in the world working on it, what else is going to happen, right? Like once that's achieved, how do we restructure society? Like what about UBI? Like who's actually going to make the policies to design out the world we're building towards? I think that's something um, potentially lacking that maybe someone can figure out that I think is important, but generally have a very positive take on the effects of like more advanced and intelligent systems can have on society.
Got it. Got it. Final question. Um, 10 years from now, you're looking back on what is Serena doing 10 years from now? What would make you happy?
You know, I always think about not just building any company, but building something that matters to the world, something I like really believe in. So that's why we didn't enjoy building like a backlog groomer or like a PM tool because I don't think B2B SaaS captivates me in the same way like a potential moonshot would.
Hmm.
Um, like I want to matter not just by making a lot of revenue, but by the things, by the work that we're doing. So Datacurve is kind of a moonshot too to achieve this sweet agent through data. And I think maybe in 10 years, maybe Datacurve already IPO. I don't know. Like maybe something happened to Datacurve, but I know for sure that I'll be working on something that I think is like super important for the world, not just like make a lot of money or not just like stay in a stable job or something like that, but definitely working on something that could be either categorized as a moonshot idea or categorized as something that would be huge if true for a lot of people in a very significant way.
Got it. That's a worthwhile goal, and we look forward to that day. Thank you for letting A4 be part of your journey, both of your and Charlie's journey and Datacurve's journey. Thank you again for doing this show. I can't wait to get this out. Thanks so much for being here. Bye for now, Serena.
Thanks so much, Anamitra.